ready one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac, welcome back. I decided to do another outdoor video today, even though it's overcast, because the lighting is just so much better, hey? But knowing my luck, it's gonna start raining any minute. Did I bring a plastic bag to transport my $200 microphone back to my house safely? No. Did I bring an umbrella? No. I'm only 5 minutes away, so let's see if I can have good luck for a change. And also that a bird doesn't poop on me. Today's topic is a little heavy. I'm not sure I'm going to post it next. I'll decide later. As the last video, my Friday reads, I was being quite negative about certain prose that I didn't like, and I don't want to come off sounding negative all the time, because I'm not. I'm overwhelmingly positive about reading and literature. But this is an important topic. This is a response video to Eric Carl Anderson's video, How Should We Read Classics? He just posted it a couple days ago. It's fantastic. I'll link it below. You should go and have a listen. In fact, why don't you stop here, go back and listen if you haven't already, and then come back. I agreed with everything he said, but I just have some things to say about it. And part of this is just reiterating what I wrote in the comment section on his video. But my book politics pretty much boils down to read everything, or at least try everything, and critique everything. This is maybe the most important part of my so-called book politics. Unless you're dealing with an out-and-out bigot, book politics is not worth fighting about. There's so many issues more important in the world. I do fight on the rare occasions that I actually encounter online or somewhere, a bigot. A relative once told me that women can't write, and I've never forgiven myself for not arguing with him. I was young and didn't know what to say. I was so shocked. But you know what I mean? Like, the other thing is, Eric's jumping off point in his video was Boccaccio's The Decameron. A bunch of booktubers are doing a buddy read. What's it called? It's got a clever name that I've got out of my head. Book Cameron. Decameron tube. Something real much better than that. I don't get so worked up about racism, sexism, homophobia in medieval literature or Renaissance literature. I still critique it. It's important to critique it. It's important to understand how our past shapes our present. But beyond that, it doesn't affect me personally, usually. I get much more affronted and worked up when I encounter it in so-called modern literature from the turn of the 20th century to the present. So the examples that I have today are from that period. But I guess what I would say, and I did say this in the comment on Eric's video, because I didn't disagree with him at all. He had a very nuanced take on it. He wasn't telling anybody that they shouldn't read the Decameron or that we should censor what we read because the stories are homophobic or racist or sexist. He wasn't saying that, and I appreciated that very much. But I guess my take on it, and this is kind of an elaboration on my book politics stance, is I want to try everything. I DNF a lot, and I often DNF, as some of these examples will show. I often DNF because of these book politics problems. But rather than not read something, I'd like to try it, but also read other quote-unquote marginalized texts. So yes, I haven't read the Decameron. I would like to try. Eric gave several jarring examples of the misogyny of the stories in that work. I still want to read it, and I want to do a deep dive on Google and find texts from the same era by women writers and read those too. So that's kind of my reaction to most of the book politics issues of the day. Yeah, I still want to read that book you say is terrible because of its politics, but I also want to read, books by women, books by non-white writers, etc., etc. So I have a few examples of books that I've either bailed on or had a very strong reaction to because of book politics. I'll give the publication date. I haven't organized them in chronological order, but I think the publication date is important when judging or critiquing a book. The first one is translated from the Italian. It's a 1949 novel called The Skin by Curzio Malaparte. It's an NYRB book, and boy, did it ever start out wonderfully. The opening scene, I think it was page 1, of the American soldiers in newly liberated Naples in World War II. It was just a stunning passage. I thought, oh, this is going to be good. I'd never heard of Curzio Malaparte, but apparently he was a fascist during the war and then changed his mind. But I bailed on this book on page 30 because in the previous 5 pages I had encountered a scene of crafty Neapolitans buying and selling African American soldiers on the black market, and this was I guess supposed to be funny. It was supposed to be comedy, but oh my god, like satire or something. And then a couple pages later, one of the main characters was talking about a bunch of female dwarfs that lived on a certain street in Naples. And it went on for paragraphs and paragraphs about how physically repulsive these female dwarfs were, and I shut the book. I thought, no. So that was just disgusting. So I couldn't continue, and it made me angry. The next one is a 2005 novel by a Dutch-speaking Belgian writer. His name is Dimitri Verhulst. I first read another of his novels called Madame Verona Goes Down the Hill. I think that's the title. And I loved it, so I wanted to try another of his, and this one was Problemski Hotel, and it's about the refugee residents of a asylum center in Belgium. How far did I get? A third of the way in, and every character, but especially every refugee character, was just a despicable character, just represented as such a nasty person, physically and especially personality-wise. And what is he up to? This is a white Belgian writer writing about refugees and taking that stance towards all of them. So I quit. The next one is a 1993 novel, so I was really tough on it because of when it was written. It's written just yesterday, really. Nobody's Fool by Richard Russo. It was a good novel, and I loved the character Miss Burrell, the old lady who was the main character's former high school English teacher and current landlady. She was such a feisty character. I loved her. I wish she had been the protagonist, and it was because of her that I got all the way to the end. The main character, Sully, he's got a certain wit and charm about him, but he's kind of a loser and so sarcastic with everybody and really sexist and blames everybody for all his problems. But he is funny. But there's only one black character in the novel. I think if I remember correctly, he was a waiter or something at the cafe where Sully always went for his morning coffee. And there's 2 pages of just unbelievable racism about him, the way the characters treat him and talk down to him in such a condescending, really baiting way. Go away. I was going to say, go away, Domino's Pizza Boy, but he's actually pretty cute, so I don't mind. He just smiled at me. Life is beautiful. What was I talking about? I was talking about a very serious topic, so let me pause for a moment and get this swooning smirk off my face. I just couldn't believe the way that the characters were baiting him, and it was not problematized at all, and it was only like a page and a half or 2 pages, but it just ruined the book for me, and I regret that I finished it, that it offended me that deeply. Like, come on, this is 1993. White American male writers of that generation, I really have trouble because they just don't question anything. I also happened to be reading it during the U.S. election campaign last year, so that made it more intense for me. The next one, this is the only one I have a physical copy of. This is a 1977 British novel by Burrell Bainbridge. It's got the worst title of a novel I've ever heard of, Injury Time. Isn't that just a terrible title? Like, it just doesn't have any... doesn't roll off the tongue. It's just ugly title. But I loved this book at first. Her wit, it's my first and only book by her. Her wit reminds me of Barbara Pym, but with an edge, and it was really interesting. And it's about a dinner party that goes awry. You can see in the picture. And one of the main characters is kind of a sad sack of a woman, but I felt that the narrative was showing us her personality too, and that it wasn't just mocking her. She was a bit of a basket case. Bye, cute pizza delivery man. Oh, did you see him? No. But look at that, the sun's coming out. And so this is a spoiler, so just fast forward if you don't want to spoil it, because I have to spoil it to talk about what horrified me about it. That sad sack of a woman gets raped, and it's treated solely in black comedic turns, and I couldn't believe that. There was no emotional, realistic anything about it. It was just a joke and a plot twist. I'm still angry about that, and I wish I hadn't bothered to finish the novel, but I kept waiting for it to kind of turn and question it or problematize it or treat it in a way beyond just comedy. Never did. So I don't think I could ever read another book by that woman, but please tell me if you think there's one I should try. But 1977? Really? The last one on my hate list, and this may surprise a bunch of you. It's David Sedaris' diaries that just were published this year, Theft by Finding. It's a selection of his diaries from 1977 to 2002. Here's the thing. David Sedaris carefully selected from his volumes and volumes of diaries what would go into this published version, and he makes a big deal out of how elaborate that selection process was in the introduction. He includes several incidents of racism that he witnesses and does not comment upon, and I had no trouble with those because I thought that's important. And he's documenting it, he's not expressing it, it's important. Racism exists in the world. He saw it, he wrote about it in his diary. Okay, I appreciated that. That was useful. But he also includes dozens and dozens of interactions and observations about physically and mentally disabled people. And maybe the first 5 or the first 10, I didn't really... he's not making any kind of commentary on what he sees, but why, in a curated version of his diaries, would he choose to include so many? Like, at least 100. What point is he trying to make? So that really ticked me off, and I'm done with David Sedaris. And I know probably many of you love his stuff. Some of his essays have made me almost pee my pants laughing, but really bothered me. I have never heard of anybody else who shares my opinion, so this whole thing about book politics, there's a certain amount of subjectivity about it. For example, I'm not going to name her, but a good bookish friend of mine bailed on Annie Proulx's novel from last year, Barkskins, because she was horrified by the stereotypical racist representation of indigenous people. And I have yet to find anybody else in the whole reading world who has her opinion. So everybody brings their own stuff to what we read, that and all that book politics gets filtered through our own consciousness. So I had a very strong reaction to David Sedaris. I did finish the diary, by the way, and I did it on audio. And I guess it was also the vehemence of his voice as he narrated in my ear those incidents. The way he would mimic the accents of the mentally, not accent, but the tones of voice of the mentally disabled people so harshly. It was an othering process that just really made me angry. The next one, and this is an example of where my book politics is certainly much more moderate than some readers, and that's about the whole topic of appropriation of voice. Is it acceptable, for example, a white male writer to write about a black South African woman? Those kinds of topics. It's a really hot topic within Canadian literature, particularly about Indigenous Canadian stories and folklore and folk tales. It's a hot topic. And I'm sitting on the fence about it. But it makes me nervous when white writers write stories that with protagonists of other races. I'm probably less likely to pick them up and read them because I'm nervous. But I did do one because I had an A to Z book challenge. There's not many titles out there for Z, so I read Zoli by Colum Mccann. This is a 2007 novel, and his protagonist is Zoli, who is a Romani or Roma woman in Czechoslovakia. And so here's this white Irish dude writing about Romani woman and Romani culture. It was really good. It's too much to say I loved it, but I really liked it. He's a great writer. It was really well done. He did gobs of research, which, that's something that people can debate. Who cares, maybe? But it rang true to me. But this is where my book politics stance comes in. It made me want to read novels and memoirs by actual Romani writers. So, if somebody tells me, he shouldn't do that, my answer is, okay, tell me which books I should read, and I will read them. But it was a good book. Those are my disjointed thoughts on book politics. Thank you for watching.